evening. Okay, we need a little more robust because it's chilly out here. Good evening. Thank you very much. Welcome to Plymouth Congregational Church, UCC. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I will get very close to this microphone. Great to have all of you here this evening for our, is this our 11th vigil? Yes. 11th vigil for Homelessness Prevention Initiative. I remember very clearly about 12 years ago, I was here in my office at Plymouth, and in walked Sister Mary Alice Murphy, who even then was a legend. And she said, I've got an idea, and I want Plymouth to be involved with it. And she was talking about the inception of the Homelessness Prevention Initiative, which you probably know aims to keep people in their housing so that they don't become homeless. It's a project that we were really pleased to join with right at its inception, and also a project that we've been pleased to continue to be involved with across the years. You may not know this, but every Monday, volunteers from Plymouth are here interviewing prospective clients for HPI. And you may not know it, but somebody actually carries a cell phone 24 hours a day, a volunteer from Plymouth, to answer questions and to make appointments for potential clients. So it's a great, great endeavor. I also want to give a big shout out to our senior high youth. How many of you are from Plymouth or one of our other faith communities? You guys are the reason that this has succeeded across the years. And I will be sleeping out with you tonight. It's only the second time I've slept out, and last time I learned my lesson. You don't sleep in a tent because tents have very poor insulation. So the box is up. So thank you all. Thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you for supporting our youth. Thank you for supporting the Homelessness Prevention Initiative. And if you want to know how you can help, it's pretty easy. You pull out your checkbook, you make a check payable to Plymouth Congregational UCC, you write HPI in the memo, and then you fill in a huge amount on that dollar sign line. And what that does is it helps people stay in their homes. What you do tonight has a palpable impact on people who might otherwise become homeless. So thank you for being here, and I'd like to introduce the new executive director of the Homelessness Prevention Initiative, Amanda Hodge.
This is so much harder. Can y'all hear me?
You can switch to the next one over. We'll do a tall and a small.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Can y'all hear me? All right. Thank you so much for being here. This is my first time being here, and this is just really neat to see everybody here. I was greeted so wonderfully with checks. No, I was greeted very wonderfully by all of y'all, and I just wanted to say thank you, and thanks for including us, and thanks for doing this for us. HPI helps about 650 households every year, which equates to around 1,500 people every year. And those are people that our clients are working, they have worked, they may be out on disability, but for the most part, they're working, they're trying everything they can to stay in their home and to make ends meet, and something happens and they just can't. The first stories that I heard that really made me understand kind of what we were here for was a young woman last winter who was a massage therapist, and she had a great job. She worked full time and she'd been doing it for a while, but she was paid hourly, so those hours counted, and she got pneumonia. It was cold winter last year when I moved here. It was really cold. She got pneumonia and she was out of work for 10 days. Well, if you do the math, that's a lot of money. And without that money coming into her home, she could not make the rent in that month. And so HPI stepped up to the plate and gave her what she needed so that she could stay in her home. She got well, she got back on her feet, and everything has been fine since. If we had not have been there, I don't even want to think about what could have happened to her. If she can't make her rent, she's out. Once they're out of their homes, it's even worse because it costs the city about $5,000 in shelter, food, and services to help someone get rehomed. That's a lot that we then have to come up with to help someone. And often, once they're out, they get so down and out, they can't pick themselves back up, or they don't know that those services exist, and then they just end up completely falling. So we are there to catch them before they fall and prevent all of that pain and heartache of something like that happening. I don't know about y'all, but I'm cold. And we just got here, we haven't even started tonight. I can't imagine what it would be like if I were so down and out that this became acceptable, because it's not. And if we decided to live like this out here, day after day, night after night, I can't imagine what state of mind I might be in to decide that were going to be okay for me. And so HPI really works hard with the help of people like you and all the supporters in Fort Collins to provide those services before they get to this point. So that's kind of what we do. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm excited about sleeping out here tonight. I've not done it, so y'all are gonna have to help me figure out what to do and how to survive out here in the cold. I've never been camping, for those of you that haven't heard. So, I don't know what I'm doing. I brought a toothbrush and some toothpaste, and I'm ready to go. So, thank you. I hope y'all have a great evening. I hope everything goes well for everybody. If there's anything that I can do, please holler. I'm here at your service tonight to help out. And if you would like to make a check to HPI or to Plymouth with HPI in the memo line, I'm over here and I'll be around all night. So thank you very much. I appreciate your help.
Thank you, Amanda. It's really great. She is sleeping out, and it was at the soup supper, which was a few months ago, and she set a challenge for $20,000 to be raised, and people there rose up and raised that. So she'll be sleeping out with us. I'm sure she's looking forward to it. Our next speaker is Sister Mary Alice Murphy, and I'll invite her up onto the stage right now.
I'm afraid I won't be sleeping out tonight. I think you'd have to come and call a mortician in the morning. But I am always thrilled when I see the people turn out. And even if you're not as big this year as you've been in past years, know that what your passion you bring, your concern and care, it means so much. And that multiplies itself and it spreads good all over the city. So realize that when you're sleeping out tonight. I thought maybe I'm going to give you a short summary of people that you're helping to keep in their housing, hopefully. I'm going to talk about those people who are actually homeless and what it's like for them. And I'm going to start with when we first built the mission. One of the first month we were there, we had our youngest person come in who was homeless. The baby was 3 days old. The mother and father were there too. They came directly from the hospital because they had no place to go. And then we have the children that are part of families, a lot of them in the Poudre School District, that don't have any place to study. Now, you might think that might be cool that they don't have to study, but it isn't so cool when you can't keep up with what's going on in your classroom. And not only that, you tend to be very ashamed of the fact that you're homeless. And then we have the teens that are going from couch to couch, trying to survive, trying not to be on the street. Some of them make it and some of them don't. And then there was a young man when we had a rally downtown who was a young adult, and he was there and he was eyeing the food that was on the table. And I told him, I said, come on, help yourself, there's plenty. And he was taking it also for his friends who were down living in the square in Old Town. And then we have the working people that Amanda talked about that are working hard and have a job, and all of a sudden an illness, something takes over, a tragedy, even a divorce, and then that family can become homeless if there's nobody there to help. And I think one of the saddest stories I heard this year was of an older woman who was 75 years old, and two other homeless people saw that she only had slippers on her feet, not even shoes, and this fortunately was in the summertime. And they managed to get her on a bus and get her over to the Murphy Center. And eventually she was able to get the help that she needed. But it goes, I just want you to know, it goes across all ages. And nobody is immune. In fact, I've had homeless people say to me, it's very, very easy to become homeless, and it's very difficult to get out of it. So just know that you are bringing a compassion and a sense that this isn't okay, that we're going to do all we can to help this from happening. And it's very important what you're doing tonight, and so I encourage you. And as we were coming, Christine picked me up, and as we were coming over, she asked me a question about, well, how do you stay in this work? Because I think I've been 35 years doing it here in Fort Collins. And I told her that I felt that you needed a strong spiritual life, that it's to stay in it. It's okay to do one or two nice things for people, but if you're going to stay in it and continue to help people, you have to nourish that spiritual life, and it has to nourish you. So those are some of the thoughts I'd like to leave you with tonight, and to know that I'm going to stay as long as I can. And I'm so grateful that there's younger people than me that are coming up and coming right down that same road, and that you're there to help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sister. She has decades of work with poverty and homelessness, and it's really inspiring just how much she's done for this issue. So we're really grateful that she was able to come today to share that perspective with us. Next up, we have the Executive Director of Homeless Gear, David Rout.
How's everybody doing tonight? Wow, I've been here for about 5 minutes, and it's hard to not take a moment to think about how cold it is outside and imagine what it's like to have to sleep out in this every day. I'm ready to head inside right about now. So as he said, I'm the Executive Director of Homeless Gear. My name's David Root, and I have the awful privilege of following Sister Mary Alice Murphy talking about the issue of homelessness, so you'll have to bear with me as I stumble through this. I just want to just say a few things about the issue of homelessness and some of the work that we do, and then really I'm here just to say thank you to all of you. Thank you to Amanda and everyone at HPI for including us in this. Thank you to all of you at Plymouth for everything that you do every year. It really is an honor for us to be a small part of it. The gear that you collect every year really does make a huge difference for us and the people we serve. It's one of the biggest gear drives for us of the year, so we look forward to all of the supplies that you donate. So truly thank you for that. Every year we have a program called Street Outreach where we send volunteers onto the streets of Fort Collins, and every year we see about 1,000 or so unduplicated individuals just on the streets. So these are people who are either sleeping outside in their cars or in the shelters. And on nights like tonight, it's easy to see why a large segment of that population is often, I guess for lack of a better word, without hope, disengaged from the system, not accessing services through that traditional agency system. And they sleep outside either because they have to or because the other options aren't suitable to them. And so when you're sleeping out tonight, I just want you to take a moment to think not just about how cold it is and how difficult it is to sleep outside, but just imagine what it would be like to have to do this every night, and while you're doing it, to have to do all of the other things that you do on a day-to-day basis. So, for those of you who are students, imagine having to wake up and go to school and then come back and do it all over again. For those of us who aren't in school anymore, imagine having to go to work and deal with all of the other issues in your life, and then on top of that, having to worry about where you're going to sleep tonight, how you're going to keep your family safe, where you're going to get your meals. I think it's really an eye-opener. But without being too depressing, I just want to say that I also think this event gives us a lot of hope. There's really nothing more inspiring than seeing young people come together behind a cause, not just the money that you raise, but the awareness that you raise about the issue of homelessness. I talked a little bit about the sort of lack of hope among those experiencing homelessness, but it really is this younger generation that's coming up and doing all this great work that gives us hope. One brief story that I was thinking about earlier today. This was really when I first started working for Homeless Gear, and I was trying to get a sense of what it's like to be homeless, and it's really not possible to get a sense of what it's like to be homeless unless you actually experience it. But I was just going around and just talking to people and asking questions, and some of them were frankly really naive because I just didn't have a lot of exposure to the issue. And I saw a man who I had worked with briefly, and he actually escaped homelessness, and I approached him and I asked him, what's the best thing? What's the biggest change or the most impactful change in your life since you escaped homelessness? And, I didn't really know what to expect. I was thinking, well, I don't have to be out in the cold anymore. I don't have to deal with the safety issue. I don't have to worry about where I'm going to find a place to sleep or to eat for the night. But what he said to me was that the biggest difference was just having a place of his own, just being able to go home, even just having one room where he could close that door and lock it and just be by himself. And so when you're out there tonight and when you go home tomorrow, just take a moment to go into a space that's yours. If you share a room with someone, kick them out for a minute and just go into that space and close the door and just reflect on how nice it is to be able to have that space just to yourself, and try to imagine what it would be like if you didn't. Again, thank you so much for what you're doing. It's really an honor to be included in this, and have a great night. Stay warm.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Who's ready to sing? Yeah. We need some singers. The words are over there, by the way. Everybody follow Lucas.
Sometimes in our lives we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow.
Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend.
I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride if I have things you need to borrow, for no one can fill those of your needs that you don't let show.
So just call
Me, brother, need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on.
I just might have a problem
that you understand.
We all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend.
I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on.
So long,
Brother, you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem to understand. We all need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can't carry, I
Sorry about that, like 0.5 size font. I think the next song has a little bit bigger font. Next we have State Senator John Kafalis, and he's also going to be sleeping out with us tonight, so we're very excited about that.
Thank you, Noah, and thanks to all of you folks. We're going to have some fun tonight, right? So every time I come to this event, I'm really glad and uplifted because I see all of you young people from different faith communities who are modeling how we as adults ought to be working together to solve problems, and how we as adults seem to have difficulty, especially these days, finding common ground, no matter where what our backgrounds are. So I really want to affirm the young people for doing this for 11 years now, for the young people at Plymouth Congregational Church and all the other faith communities. You guys are awesome. I'm always amazed too, the folks who do the music and play the guitar. I don't know how they can strum the chords when it's so cold out, but somehow they manage to do that. So as Noah mentioned, and I appreciate Noah and his outreach to folks like me to make sure we knew exactly what was happening. So again, all of you deserve a lot of commendations for how you organize this thing. But I will be sleeping out tonight. I've been saying that I would sleep out the last bunch of years, and then every time I kind of go home. But indeed, I brought more than a toothbrush and toothpaste, and so I'm prepared to sleep out, although I'm not sure if I'm going to stay up as late as I think some of you may be staying up. So hopefully the box that I'll be in will be in a nice quiet corner. Hopefully I won't be making too much noise or snoring. But all that aside, let me just say a couple of quick things. I understand that what was asked of me by Noah was to provide the political response to the faces of homelessness. And I want to share with you just a couple of thoughts. The first one is that when we look at how do we solve problems that our communities are faced with, and we look at policy solutions, and we look at what might be the role of government, working with the private sector, working with faith-based communities, and so forth, we have to be mindful of the fact that, especially in the world that we live in this great country of ours, policy and politics intersect. And so you have to be very mindful of the politics of the day. And one thing I would suggest to you, because we are in a political season, we'll be voting for president next November, and there's a lot of other folks, other offices that are up for re-election or election. One of the things that I would recommend is that you hold elected folks accountable, like myself. And when people are on the campaign trail, or there are forums, or they're doing their little stump speeches, including myself, ask questions about, well, what are you going to do about the fact that in this country, in this state, in our community, there is an incredible lack of affordable housing, and that's a big contributing factor to why families and individuals, veterans and others, are dealing with homelessness issues. So that's the first thing I want to leave you with, is that please engage in the political process. Please be respectful. Make sure that if you're 18 before next November 2016, that you are registered to vote, and then ask tough questions of the people running for office. The second thing that I'd like to mention is that when we look at how we solve problems from the policy standpoint, there are three basic approaches. One of the approaches is referred to as, is preventing the problem. So here tonight we have Homeless Prevention Initiative. It's in its name, and it's an amazing program that's been here, a service that's been here, and it's trying to prevent the problem of homelessness. And that makes a lot of sense in so many different ways. It's more cost effective, it's more humane, it's more dignified. So there's an example of a policy that's focusing on prevention. And then you have policies or responses to problems that are trying to address human suffering, trying to alleviate human suffering, and that's why we have homeless shelters. So in Fort Collins, we are very fortunate that we have Catholic Charities, the Mission. We have the Fort Collins Rescue Mission. We have the Faith Family Hospitality Network. And based on some of the numbers that I'm aware of, on a given night, those three institutions can house about 270 people that are experiencing homelessness. So addressing human suffering, and then finally the notion of curing the problem. Right now at the federal level, there's a bill, that legislative stuff. It's HR 1662 that was introduced by a congressman from Minnesota, Keith Ellison. It's basically called the Common Sense Housing Investment Act. What it would do is change the mortgage deduction, and it would repurpose some of those dollars. Right now, there's folks who get quite a bit of a tax break from the mortgage deduction, and there's a way of restructuring that would still benefit moderate income families, and it would change it from a deduction to a flat 15% tax credit. It would ultimately save $200 billion over 10 years, and that money could be repurposed to help to create more affordable housing, to make more Section 8 housing choice vouchers. So there's an example of a federal legislation. At the state level where I am, we will be working on trying to find dollars that are already there, but repurpose those dollars to try to have more resources, public resources for affordable housing. I'm actually working on a bill that would help homeless families that need child care overcome some of the barriers to getting child care. And then finally at the local level, I have to give a shout out to the city of Fort Collins. It's a complex issue, this homelessness thing, but to their credit, they have done some good things, working with the Fort Collins Housing Authority, working with other folks to create what's referred to as permanent supportive housing. So people are getting into housing first, and they have supports and services, and that ultimately helps them to be more successful. So there's a lot of stuff going on. You're an important part of it. I just want to say in closing that I'm really honored to be finally sleeping out. The last time I slept amidst a bunch of cardboard boxes, was about 25 years ago. I was hitchhiking from Fort Collins to Durango, and I got stuck in South Park, this side of Wolf Creek Pass, and it was about 10 o'clock at night, and nobody was going to pick me up that late at night, and it was getting really, really cold. So I remember climbing into the back of a panel truck that was parked, and there was a whole bunch of cardboard, and that night it got down to like 20 below. So tonight it'll be like we're in the Bahamas, right? But I want to just humbly thank you, young folks and parents and families and faith communities. You are truly living out and acting on the Sermon on the Mount, which is something that I think guides many of us. And thank you for doing that, and thank you for being as awesome as you are.
This one's too short. I'll go with the tall one. Next, we have our popcorn prayer. So hopefully, if you're like one of the faith communities that's participating, you know what we're talking about, because otherwise you're gonna be put on the spot in like 5 seconds. So will all the faith communities go around to the ramp and then come up and offer their popcorn prayer? So just how it'll work is that each faith community can do their prayer, and we can just join them in our prayers for the homelessness. This is an interfaith event, so you can start walking.
We pray for the people who have no time, who have no home to go to, who know home is not where the heart is, who don't get to worry about internet speeds,
who live in a persistent state of hopelessness,
who have to leave the address line blank,
we can no longer ignore.
We pray for the people.
All right, we're here to pray for all the people, not only in this community, but throughout the entire world who don't have a place to go home tonight. Hope that they have a safe night and that they can find a place to stay long-term in the future.
And we hope that they can find a safe place and that they are as warm as they can possibly be.
We're also here to experience what they experience on their night.
And we hope that we can teach this to other people someday.
Okay, so we have our second song, and this one I think has bigger font. But part of it is not in English, so you'll see when it goes up there. Just sound it out. Oh, and just be clear, it's Maggie and Lucas who are doing the singing lead, to give them the credit that they deserve. Thank you.
Hello. A little chilly out here. I just want to thank everyone who came out tonight to support this effort, this mission to not only raise funds, but raise awareness for the issue of homelessness in this community and across our country and across our world. I encourage us all to not only think these prayers, to speak these prayers, but to live them, to put our feet under these prayers and really make them a part of who we are year-round. So go this night in the peace of the God who loves you, the God who knows you by name, and who knows the names of each and every person who doesn't have a roof over their head tonight. Go knowing that love surrounds you, and love is the way that you should greet each person that you meet, no matter what their state of homelessness is. So go in peace. May the God of peace go with you. Amen.
How many communities have a state senator, a director of a social service agency, a pastor, all staying out with you tonight? I think this is terrific.